Thank you so much for joining us on this, which is our new podcast. Very exciting. This is a teaser, hopefully some inspiration, just to share with you a little bit of what's coming in some of the conversations that we hope to share with you very soon. But first, some intros. My name is Kate Middleton. I'm often known as the other Kate Middleton for perhaps obvious reasons. I'm a psychologist and church leader. I've been in positions of leadership for over 20 years now, both leading in local church context, but also in a national role. I'm one of the directors of the Mind and Soul Foundation. You might have heard of us. We're a national organisation encouraging and supporting church leaders, leadership more broadly within the church and community, as we wrestle with all kinds of topics around emotional and mental health and well-being. And for me personally, more recently, I've been in a season of transition and change. So just responding to a sense of new calling from the Lord, and I've recently been ordained in the Anglican Church, which is where I'm now leading. But I am not on my own here today. I'm here with a good friend and colleague, with Justin Humphreys. Hello, Justin.
Hey, Kate. Hey, everyone. It's so good to spend some time with you. We're really excited about this new series, aren't we, Kate? We feel that it's the right time to do this. It feels that there is a real appetite to explore some of the issues that we will be with our various guests across the episodes. Just for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Justin Humphreys. I'm Chief Executive of the independent, non-denominational Christian safeguarding charity 318. And for those of you who remember pre-2018, previously known as CCPAS, the Church's Child Protection Advisory Service. And we are an organisation that has a heart to work with other individuals and organisations to help create and maintain safer places. So my background broadly is in social work, church leadership, and it is a privilege to bring those things together to do what I do. And we spend much of our time these days supporting organisations to think about how to create safer environments, safer cultures, what the various components of those are, how to be both preventative in the approach so that hopefully we avoid difficult, harmful situations from arising, but also to help people to respond well when those things have in fact happened. And as we all know, it seems at the moment as though a day doesn't go by when we don't hear of a scandal or a situation where a church or an organisation of some kind has faced some kind of difficulty. So hence we felt that maybe it was the time to bring some focus to some of this and think, what can we do? How can we be positive in our focus towards achieving those safer places and safer leadership practices?
Yeah, and I guess ultimately it's probably my fault that we're sat here primarily, isn't it? Because we were having a conversation about this, Justin and I, and really just coming out of our own pondering and processing and questioning some of the pretty significant scandals and exposures, leadership failures, direct abuses, perhaps some others that were less intentional but still very painful, and outcomes that have been really tough for so many people. And in recent years, as Justin says, it feels like there have been so many of those. And we've seen some really robust responses to those. Just some amazing, courageous people who've worked really hard to expose and challenge unhealthy or risky culture, difficult patterns in leadership, practice in specific spaces. But for me, more and more, I just felt like there was a question around what did it look like at ground level to actually make changes and to create a space where we had some of the conversations that we might need to have in order to do that. And I suppose this feels really personal to me. You know, I've had the immense privilege of working across so many denominations, networks, cultures, sharing friendships with people across so many of those different church spaces over the last couple of decades. But the truth is, I've known many of the people whose names have come up. And honestly, because we want this to be a really honest, authentic space, I have experienced personally some really difficult dynamics in ministry over those years. I have seen firsthand things that are really unhealthy. I've experienced some stuff that's been really tough. And I've also sat with many people as they have tried to find solid ground again, trying to put themselves, their ministry life, their family life, their personal life back together after their own experiences and the often devastating impact of leadership abuse. And I know you've similarly done that, Justin. You're involved in church leadership as well. And obviously you've had a lot you've been involved very much in some of the outcomes of these recent situations.
Absolutely, Kate. And I think it's worth us saying right at the beginning here that we have huge respect for those who have been in some of these difficult situations. I, like you, have known some individuals whose practice, ministry, behaviour has been found to be problematic, harmful, abusive. I've also worked alongside many organisations who have been wrestling with the difficulties that all of that has created. And I think that we have to acknowledge right at the beginning just how difficult being a part of those situations is, has been, might be in the future. And maybe just to say, let's be mindful that we all bring something different. We've all had different experiences, and talking about these sorts of things, listening to the conversations that we may have, we need to be kind to ourselves. So if ever there's anything that we're talking about resonates unhelpfully with you, we just encourage you to take a pause and not feel that you need to stay with us at that point. Come back to it if you'd like. But I think there are many people that maybe we have all come into contact with who are trying desperately to work within, to create healthy environments that enable everybody to flourish. And sometimes those efforts are in the context of some pretty unhealthy situations. So I think we just need to recognise that from the off.
Yeah, and I think we both come to this recognising as well the genuine challenges of what it is to be a church leader in any time and context. I don't think it's ever been an easy role, but particularly perhaps now, and we will, I'm sure, talk about some of the particular pressures and anxieties that there are around church leadership right now, and some of the contexts and the debates that are around that are certainly influencing and perhaps putting extra pressure on leaders. And it isn't clear cut, is it? I mean, I've heard brilliant people who are justifiably, pushing back against some of these patterns and certainly against the abuses that have happened. But it isn't as easy as just saying, let's just tear all these things down. Let's not have leaders. Let's not have people who have positions of power. And I think we're recognizing there are tensions all the time in church leadership, and we have to have wisdom beyond our own. I mean, literally, that's why when we're ordained as Anglican priests, we say we cannot do this in our strength alone. But our human wisdom also does need to be really attuned to what the issues are, what the dynamics are. And I suppose we wanted to have some conversations just exploring some of that stuff. And I guess, honestly, for me as well, this does come at a time of transition. I've stepped back for a season as I've been training and been in formation for Anglican ordained ministry. And it's felt like there has been a God nudge for me, Justin, just to take that time and use it really well. And, I love the church. I never thought I would. I'm not from a churchy background at all. My family of origin aren't churchy. And at first I found church culture really weird. But 20 years in, I just love the church. I love the potential, the possibility, the promise of what God can do with us as people, how we can transform the community, the good things that God longs to release if we can get this right. And, we are, I believe, the hope of the world. We're called to carry God's love and light into the world. And I have been formed as a leader very much in that charismatic evangelical culture, I guess. I've also spent quite a lot of time in more liturgical, perhaps formal church culture. But I guess one of the things I've been really aware of throughout that is, at the same time, holding a sort of professional hat and awareness as a psychologist. I've sat in so many leadership training sessions. I've heard from so many amazing, wise people, both from the UK and further afield. I've been in the learning communities. I've been in the big network conferences like you, Justin. I've spoken at quite a few of them. But quite often what I've been aware of is there are sort of little red flags that go off in my psychologist head that I've been intentionally sort of ignoring and putting to one side, because actually the practice and the culture that we've been teaching is very set, very much looking in a particular direction. And I suppose one of the things that I'm recognizing now after all that time, and I don't know how you feel about this after recent years as well, Justin, is that there is a bit of a God nudge in some of those spaces to speak out some of that and say, actually, this is not okay. We do need to change some of this. And whilst I understand why we've done what we've done and how we've reacted to it and what the heart is of what we're trying to achieve, and maybe some of it's seasonal, that we've been in a season where those things have been really important, now it does feel like there are some things that we probably do need to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree 100%. And I'm so glad that you've also put out there, Kate, your love for the church. And I'm right there with you. I've actually been accused in the past of threatening to destroy the church. I mean, I think, frankly, that gave me rather too much credit. And it certainly has never been my intention. My desire is to see the church be everything she was intended to be. And yes, I think you're absolutely right that we are at a critical point here, I believe, where we have the opportunity to sensitively, appropriately call out some of the difficulties and issues that we see in terms of behaviour, attitudes, whatever they may be, that threaten to undermine the character of God's church. And the impact that it has upon those that come into contact with us. But I am a firm believer. This is God's plan. The church is His vehicle by which we show something of God to this wonderful world we live in. But that doesn't mean it's all great, and I think we all know that. But being prepared to hold a mirror up to ourselves firstly, to say, what part do I play in this? Bringing ourselves to that difficult place of recognizing that our contribution hasn't necessarily always been great either. So this isn't about, looking to them over there and saying, oh dear, look how wrong they've got it. It has to start with us. It has to start with a genuine desire to dig deeper and to see in ourselves some of those things which haven't necessarily been the best before we start saying to the general church, hey, can't we do better here? Because the answer is yes, we can. But unless we're seen to be a part of that ourselves, I think that's largely a hypocritical endeavour, isn't it, really?
Yeah, because, we do love the church, but genuinely, on the whole, love church leaders too. They're amazing people and I really love hanging out with them. And although there are obviously cases that you and I have known and perhaps been involved with some of the fallout of, where perhaps there have been more intentional abuses, really serious stuff going on the whole, situations that I've been involved with where leaders have hurt people or caused harm, it hasn't been intentional. And I think there's two things I'm really aware of in my own leadership, because yes, I love leaders. Of course I do. I am one. And I often think they're literally there, but for the grace of God go I. One of my most common prayers to the Lord is, please don't let me hurt anyone. Please don't let me mess anything up, because I'm so aware that everything I do every day has an impact on people, and not just their emotional well-being, but their spiritual health, their spiritual well-being. That burden that we carry is huge. So I am, of course, aware of that. But I'm also aware of two other things. I guess one thing is a lot of anxiety. So when I speak to leaders at the moment, I do think there is a lot of anxiety. People often say to me, what if I'm the next person, who's exposed for something that I've dim-wittedly, completely unintentionally done that's stupid? And I guess we are all aware we're human beings and we do make mistakes. And I think there is a lot of anxiety and a lot of questioning of how should we be doing this then? Because we do have power, we do have authority, we do have influence. And we also have challenges. We have financial pressures, we have other pressures. We do need to have people in our churches, which is not always as easy as you might hope it was. And so how do we motivate people, inspire people, influence people, and do that well? And I guess these are some of the conversations that I'm really looking forward to us being able to have. We've got some amazing guests coming, so I'm so looking forward to hearing from them. And then the other tension for me, because I work a lot with younger leaders, so I am sadly no longer a young leader, which I find a source of great distress for me. I'm starting to be described as an old leader, which is, comes to us all, doesn't it, Justin? But I'm aware of talking to a generation of leaders underneath me who are really questioning this. And as particularly those who are just sort of coming of age, coming into leadership, exploring calling, perhaps recognizing perhaps that ministry is what the Lord is asking of them. And I'm seeing some of them really struggle, because I think honestly, as a leader of my generation, they're looking at what we've modelled and just saying, I don't want to do that. I don't think it's safe to do that. I don't see a model that feels like something that's sustainable for me or my family. I don't want to be part of some of the things that I've seen. And there are really good challenges coming from that generation. I think the Lord is also calling people to leadership who are perhaps different, who are bringing something different, which is wonderful. But my big anxiety is that I don't want to lose those people. And so another thing that I want to achieve, I hope through these conversations, and I hope that some of you listening will be in that cohort, is that we do start to explore what does it look like to model something that you do feel is what the Lord is calling you to be a part of. So that's a real passion of mine.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it would be fantastic to see some of that.
We hope you're enjoying this conversation on healthy leadership. If you're interested in more content like this, why not subscribe to My Spring Harvest Plus for access to over 12,000 talks from a range of speakers to help you develop as a leader and grow in your faith. There's thousands of talks from previous years at Spring Harvest alongside loads of other Christian events. You can try before you subscribe and find out more at myspringharvestplus.org.
For what it's worth, I've had quite a few conversations in recent months, particularly, where there's a view expressed that, leaders who are, or future leaders who are exploring their call, stepping into leadership ministry, are questioning whether actually, given everything that's happening, they really want to do it anymore. Those that are already in positions of ministry and leadership, questioning whether they really have the stamina to continue. And one of the key ingredients that I've noted in many of those conversations is that there is a sense of fear around these things. And, let's be honest, church leadership is hard, isn't it? It's hard, but at the same time, it's so rewarding. It's such a privilege to share in people's lives to the extent that church leaders often will. But I'd like us to be able to explore a little bit with some of our guests, how can we start to break down the power that fear holds for leaders in a constructive way that doesn't diminish or devalue the negative experience that some are having, but looks at it honestly and openly to say, what's healthy here? How can we work with that fear in a way like you do, Kate? You know, that prayer every day, God help me not to hurt anyone, to cause any. I think that is great, because I think it's that continual conscious awareness that is a possibility today, because I'm a broken, fallen human being, but I'm desperately wanting to do what God would have me do. So that awareness, I think, is great. But when it tips into almost this paralysis that I see some feeling, I'm pretty convinced actually that level of fear is not helpful. But we're seeing it. The conversations are indicating that is very real for many people.
So I think if that's something, as you're listening, that you're thinking, yeah, honestly, I do wrestle with that. And I'm not even sure, maybe some of the people listening to this right now, Justin, will be thinking, I'm not sure that I'm going to stay in this role, in this leadership space. I think one of my prayers would be that this series of conversations is really helpful for you to process some of that, to ponder some of that. And I think there is a really interesting question right now. For me, I have a bit of a spiritual sense in so many conversations I'm having that the Lord is raising some different people into leadership and challenging us to lead in some new ways, some innovative ways, but also to model something that's really different. So in so many ways, I'm not the classic person you might expect to be called to church leadership. And if I was, perhaps most of all wouldn't be called to those very sort of charismatic, glossy leadership spaces. In fact, when we were first letting people know that I was going to be ordained into the Anglican Church, mostly the response was, "What? Really? You?" But I'm so amazed, and like you say, it's such a privilege to be called to this. But I think for me, what I sometimes find really hard, Justin, just being transparent with you, is I don't see me modelled anywhere, really, or rarely do I see people who I think, oh yes, that's someone like me leading a church. That's how I would lead. And I think what this season is often about is modelling something that looks different. And so some of these conversations will be talking a little bit about that. Perhaps we've seen one response to a common challenge, but there's other things that we could do, other things we could try, other perspectives, practical suggestions to be aware of. And I think it's going to be really helpful to get some reflection on that from people who sort of look in from various different perspectives. And I know we've worked really hard to make sure that we're also talking to people who are from a broad range of different denominations, good range of gender, ethnic backgrounds, so that we get as many possible perspectives into this. And lots of people who bring, a bit like you and I do, Justin, a different discipline as well to the conversations that we're having. And I think that will really help. I hope, both for me, selfishly, but also perhaps for some other people who are listening, that will be helpful.
Yeah. I think it's a really important point that you make, Kate, that sometimes we need to see... I'm going to use the term kindred spirits, because so often it would be easy to get distracted by the apparently continual flow of negative stories. And whilst it may be easier for us to stand back and look at something and say, well, I wouldn't do that like that, or, oh, well, I would never have gotten myself into that position because there's more to it than that, isn't there? I think those things are important. But recognising that, as you say, there are different ways that we are able to learn possibly from people who we might not have imagined we had something to learn from, will be absolutely key here. I mean, it's certainly what I'm hoping to come away from this series, having talked with a whole load of different people. I'm hungry for what I might learn as much as anybody else. So I think we all need to approach it with that open learning posture that says, however good I think I might deal with a given situation, I am not always going to get it right. Therefore, let's have ears to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's good for us all to be exploring what does a call to godly leadership look like, to a healthy leadership, both for us, healthy as leaders. I do believe this should be sustainable. So many people say to me, well, you can't be a church leader for your whole career. It's just too hard. You'll just, you burn out and then do something else. And I just think, well, look, I'm 20 years in. And I have every intention of doing this for another 20, as long as I'm, physically healthy and able to. I want to keep doing this. And so I think conversations around what's sustainable and healthy for us, but also obviously healthy for those that we lead. Too often I see people, or I have seen over the years, people say, oh, but look what they've achieved. What a brilliant person. Look at the amazing things God's doing through them. But then behind the scenes, I see this sort of train of broken, destroyed people. And I don't think that's okay. I don't personally, I'm not willing to accept that as part of the sacrifice of being a successful, in inverted commas, leader. So I think there are some really good questions for us to ask. What does healthy leadership look like for other people? And actually being aware that although we might see some amazing models and examples from cultural or business leadership or some of those other spaces, and I'm sure we'll hear some good insight and wisdom from some of those spaces, but at a ground level, Luke 22 talks about how our cultural leaders hold authority in particular ways. Maybe they hold particular titles and platforms, but we are called to something different.
Yeah.
Verse 26 suggests that there is something that's almost the exact opposite of some of those cultural models that we will see in terms of how we hold status, how we care for people, how we serve, how we focus on other people's needs, not on raising our own profile. We are called to something that's really different. So there is immediately a tension there, because our world demands one style of leadership, but we know that our Lord asks something different of us. So how do we hold those two tensions in balance? And I want to explore that more.
Yeah, me too. I think that'd be so good. And I think we shouldn't forget that working in a way that supports the health and well-being, whether that's physical, emotional, spiritual, of others, is very much, in fact, almost inextricably linked to the efforts that we make to maintain our own health. And there are so many situations, sadly, that I've had to be a part of in past years where that has been a key factor. That it has been out of a lack of personal health, again, emotional, physical, spiritual, that has in part led to the harm, abuse, what have you, of others. So I think it's a really sobering point to remind ourselves of. We often talk about the analogy, don't we, of the Sunday school class, where a question is asked of a bunch of children, and inevitably the answer Jesus will be given as the only answer that can always be right. But I have to say that in this particular circumstance, that is very much the right answer, without any sense of glibness. Because if we are to, as it says in Philippians, to genuinely imitate the character of Jesus, then doing things for the good of others rather than ourselves, bringing that sense of humility into all the things that we do, I am convinced utterly is a significant piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah, fantastic. So our hope and promise to you, if you're hoping to join us on this journey, is to share with you some conversations with some people far more brilliant than both of us. We will ask all the questions that we have on our minds, and hopefully some questions that you might have on your mind as well, that this will be a great space. We will be asking each of our people, as well as talking to them about some of their particular personal skill, professional experience, knowledge, wisdom. We will be asking each of them 3 things. We will be asking them what needs to change. Is there something, anything, patterns, perspectives, things, something that we do need to change or we need to question? We'll be asking them, what are the practices that as leaders we need to be following, things we need to be doing, things we regularly need to be checking in on as part of our healthy leadership. And we will be asking them for some biblical perspective, because we are, at the end of the day, we're led by the word of God. We are following the Lord. We are not doing this in our own strength. And I absolutely love to bring that ancient biblical wisdom to the current day, to our understanding of the human mind and the people that we are. And so just bringing that into that space as well, and hearing some thoughts from each one of our guests on that. I'm looking forward to that too.
Well, we're really excited about what we plan to cover in this series of podcasts. So Kate and I will be talking with a vast array of different people from different disciplines, different backgrounds, with different perspectives to bring to this issue of healthy leadership today. So wherever you get your podcasts, click follow, download, whatever it is you need to do on the different platforms. We'd love to have you with us, and who knows, maybe we can go on a journey together. We can inspire some new conversations, and maybe just play a little part in identifying what it is we might each do in our own leadership roles, in our different spaces, to make sure that it is safer, healthier, better. So join us. It'd be great to have you with us.